And we're beginning this half hour with Governor Whitmer's massive $74 billion budget that includes significant infrastructure investments to bridges and roads. Thank you for staying with us at 5. I'm Glenda Lewis.
And I'm Brian Abel. Also included in the governor's budget, a $66 million fix to help prevent flooding, like what we saw in Metro Detroit last summer. Quite a bit of dirt.
Yeah, I was actually submerged under like 10 feet of water. I was at the deepest point on 94, just before the living noise exit. There were several cars down there, and if you look on the other side, you would see where it was so flooded that other cars hit the car underneath because they couldn't even see.
We talked with Ronald Foster as he was working to get his damaged car back last summer.
Like $600. Been out here all morning long. Really what this is, exploitation. Channel 7 has been here from the beginning to the end. From the towing process to even now.
His car, one of dozens, caught up in this. The worst flooding we've seen in southeast Michigan since 2014. Highway arteries in and around Detroit and cars on them submerged back in late June. A significant contributing factor, freeway pump stations failing. Not because of anything mechanical, rather a loss of power to them. As the flooding unfolded, we questioned MDOT live on air about the issue.
It's not so much a failure of the pump house as a failure of power or too much water coming in a short amount of time.
So those generators are not automatic for these pump houses then?
They are not. They are quite an expensive piece of equipment. We just could not possibly afford to have generators sitting in all 140 pump houses.
Now, that may change. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's budget proposal provides pump station funding specifically for generators. A $66 million chunk of the $74 billion proposal. Show me the way. WXYZ was granted access to see firsthand what the funding could do and how these stations work, starting with the remote monitoring system.
It'll tell us right away if there's a power outage. We know we got to man a generator. Then we got to drive around the same roads that everybody else does, trying to find the fastest way to get out here.
MDOT engineer Ishrat Jahan. What would it have looked like back in June if all of those pump stations had power?
So back in June, we had 70 locations that was flooded. If the pump station were working and we didn't have widespread power outage, we didn't have 70 locations flooded at the same time. We had few of them flooding.
So we would not have seen as strong of highway flooding as we did see, right?
Correct.
So $66 million could protect against the power grid going dark during flooding, but that's just one hurdle.
This is the motor. It'll start, it'll spin the pump, and the pump draws water up and shoots it out the discharge tube.
Where's this thing heading?
This is heading to the river.
As long as the river
has room, it is heading to the river.
When it doesn't have room, then what happens?
We have some issues.
Pump stations like this can only pump out so much water at a time, right? But then also, if everything's flooded, then there's nowhere to pump the water to.
Correct. So if the rainfall is too much and our outlets are full, like Rouge River or the city systems are full, then we cannot pump out the water. The water has nowhere to go. So we have to increase the capacity.
And that's what's happening at the I-75 modernization project. MDOT slowly addressing the capacity issue by building a drainage tunnel, giving the excess water a place to go, a holding tank of sorts. Now at this point, you may be asking why this isn't being done more or sooner. Answer: how much would it cost to increase all of those things so that what happened back in June doesn't happen again?
Well, it's gonna be $1 billion.
$1 billion?
$1 billion.
Is $1 billion coming to MDOT?
Not at the moment.
For flood victims like Ronald Foster, any progress, like the generators, welcomed.
I think that it needs to be pushed through immediately to avoid any further disasters. We don't need history to repeat itself.
Now that billions estimate is over decades, but any investment, including the $66 million for the generators, isn't a given. The legislature and the governor have to agree on a budget, including the infrastructure projects, before any new cash can flow to MDOT. Glenda?